That sound your car makes only when you back up, it's not random. It's not just a little quirk your car has developed. It's a specific message, a mechanical clue. And if you choose to ignore it, you're choosing to let a problem get more dangerous and a lot more expensive.
So in this explainer, we're going to decode that message. We're going to break down exactly what your car is trying to tell you. And stick with me, because by the end, I'm going to give you a dead simple test you can do in your own driveway to figure out exactly what's wrong.
But look, before we even think about listing parts, you need a framework. You need a way to think about the problem. Honestly, knowing how to listen is way more important than knowing the name of every single component under your car.
And this is your entire toolkit. It's just 3 questions. First, what does the noise actually sound like? Are we talking about a high-pitched squeal, or is it a deep, heavy clunk? Is it a metallic grinding sound, or more of a rhythmic click, click, click? Second, where is it coming from? Try to be specific. Is it up front by the left wheel, or does it seem like it's right under the middle of the car? And third, when exactly does it happen? Is it the second you shift the car into reverse, or is it only when you're actually moving backwards and maybe only when you're turning? Just answering these 3 questions is going to eliminate like 80% of the possibilities right off the bat. You have to understand, putting your car in reverse is a unique stress test. See, when you're driving forward, all the parts, from your engine mounts to your suspension, are loaded with force in one consistent direction. They wear in nice and quiet along that line. But when you back up, that entire flow of force and torque gets flipped on its head. That sudden change in direction slams parts against their opposite, less worn surfaces. And that's what instantly exposes any slop, any looseness, or any hidden damage. It's a load direction diagnostic clue. All right, the #1 source for noises when you're reversing is without a doubt your braking system. And that's because all the forces on your brake pads and the hardware holding them completely flip, which makes even the tiniest amount of wear or looseness suddenly very, very audible.
Okay, so if you hear a really high-pitched squeal, that's almost always the brake pad wear indicator. It's just a little metal tab designed to scrape against the rotor when your pads get too thin. Sometimes, reversing changes the angle just enough to make it scream when it was quiet going forward. Now, what about a single, heavy clunk? The moment you start moving backward, that's the brake pad itself shifting inside the caliper bracket. It means your anti-rattle clips are probably worn out or missing. And if you hear a rhythmic rubbing, especially from the back, that's a good sign your parking brake isn't releasing all the way.
So let's talk about this number, 2 millimeters. This is the typical minimum safe thickness for your brake pads. That little wear indicator I mentioned, it's designed to start making a racket right around this point. To put that in perspective, that's less than the thickness of 2 dimes stacked together. You have almost no safety margin left.
And let me be perfectly clear about this. A squeal means you need an inspection now. If you hear a metallic scraping or a grinding sound, the urgency is absolute. That means you are through the pad material and grinding metal on metal. Do not drive the vehicle. Get it inspected right where it is.
All right, if the brakes check out, your drivetrain is the next place to look. We're talking about your axles, your differential, your wheel bearings, the whole system that gets power to the wheels. When you go into reverse, the torque flowing through these parts flips direction, and it is a brutal test that exposes any wear that's totally silent when you're just driving down a road.
So listen for these specific sounds. A rhythmic clicking or popping noise that only happens when you're reversing and turning the wheel. That is the classic textbook symptom of a failing outer CV joint. What's happening is the joint is at its sharpest angle and the worn out parts inside are starting to bind up. Now, a continuous grinding or a rumbling sound, that points to a failed wheel bearing. That is a red level emergency. A seized bearing can lock up a wheel while you're driving. And finally, if you get one single hard clunk, the moment you shift into reverse, that's the entire engine and transmission rocking back and forth because a mount has failed.
Okay, our final area of investigation is your suspension and steering. Reversing while turning puts a lot of side-to-side or lateral load on everything. It forces worn bushings and tired joints to move in ways they don't normally have to, and, well, they start to complain.
The sounds here are pretty distinct. A knocking sound, especially when you're reversing over a little bump like the edge of your driveway, is very often a worn-out sway bar link. A loud, single clunk that seems to come from high up in the suspension, almost under your windshield, that's a failed strut top mount bearing. The bearing has seized up, and when you turn, the whole spring assembly binds and then violently snaps into place. And hey, if you just hear a tinny, rattling vibration that seems to change with engine RPM, that's almost always a loose exhaust heat shield. Annoying, for sure, but not an emergency.
Okay,
So you've listened like a pro, you know the type of sound, you know the location, and you know the timing. Now it's time for the payoff. Let's run through that driveway diagnostic I promised and match what you're hearing to the most likely cause.
This is the key. Here's your test. Go out to your car in a quiet spot. Roll down your driver's side window. First, just shift into reverse. Hear anything? A single heavy thunk? That's pointing to a bad mount. Okay, now reverse slowly in a straight line. Are you hearing a continuous grinding noise or maybe a howl that changes pitch as you speed up? That's a wheel bearing or your differential. Finally, back up while turning your wheel all the way to the left and then all the way to the right. Is there a rhythmic clicking noise that just appeared? That is your outer CV joint. Guaranteed. This chart right here translates what your car is telling you into plain English.
So the sounds we've just covered, they're not just noises. They are data points. And ignoring that data has a very real cost, not just in dollars, but in your safety.
So what's the bottom line here? A noise that only happens in reverse is an early warning system. It's your car exposing a weak link under a very specific stress test, long before that part fails completely while you're driving forward. A clicking CV joint will become a snapped axle that leaves you stranded on the side of the road. Worn brake pads will become a seized caliper that means you can't stop effectively. These aren't possibilities, they're eventualities. Fixing something early is always exponentially cheaper and safer than dealing with a catastrophic failure down the line. Let this be the final thought. The noise is a signal. Your decision, right now, to act on it or ignore it is the difference between a minor repair bill and a major system failure. Don't guess and don't wait. Get it inspected.